Hey everybody, we've got a couple of decks for Post-Khans of Tarkir Standard that I've put together. I'm going to run through some deck techs on those. So this first video is going to be a deck tech on the Temur Morphs deck I have put together. So let's take a look at that. So this deck is based around the morph mechanic. So we've got a playset of Trail of Mysteries. This makes it so that whenever you play a morph face down, you get a land out of your deck, and when you turn a morph up, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So basically this just lets you hit all of your land drops so you can afford to unmorph the more expensive morph guys, like Sagu Mauler and Ashcloud Phoenix. And it also turns all of your less impressive morphs into Borderland Rangers, plus whatever you get when you turn them face up. So let's look at the cheap morphs, and then we'll look at the expensive morphs, and then we'll look at what else the deck has going on. So first we've got 3 Rattleclaw Mystics. So Rattleclaw Mystic is good in this deck, but it's not as impressive here as it is in decks like Monsters. So we're just running the 3 of them, because your best turn 6 play is Sagu Mauler, and then after that you're just doing stuff like casting 2 face down morphs or a morph and a lightning strike, just something not quite as impressive as Monstrous Stormbreath Dragon or anything like that. Then we've got a playset of Temur Charger. Temur Charger is very good. It's a 2-drop that can attack past Sylvan Caryatid. It also turns into a 5-power guy when you turn it face up with Trail of Mystery in play, so it can attack into Nyxfleece Ram or go over the top of Brimaz. This guy's actually pretty deceptively good. Just 3 power for 2 mana is not a bad deal, and then he has Morph and a Morph trigger so that you can sort of abuse some of the synergies with the Trail of Mystery and some other stuff that's going on. We've got 4 Ice Feather Aven. This guy has been pretty good as well. Again, he's a 2/2 flyer for 2 mana, and then you get the morph stuff basically as an almost free bonus. 2/2 flyer for 2 is a little bit under where you want to be in standard right now. There was a time when it was good, but I don't think that's true any longer. But then when you get morph to work with the Trail of Mystery and then a face-up trigger to bounce a guy, it's just a very solid card that gives you a lot of stuff for not a lot of mana. Then for the bigger morphs, we've got a playset of Ashcloud Phoenix and a playset of Sagu Mauler. Ashcloud Phoenix is actually what I thought would be the best morph in this deck, but it turns out not quite to be so much. The trigger where it turns face up and deals 2 damage to each player is often a drawback, because against the more aggressive decks, you're playing more of a mid-range role, so you do take some early damage. But just having a 4-power flyer for 4 mana that gives you a 2/2 when it dies is pretty strong. And against the control decks, you absolutely can use the turn face up ability to just keep having a Phoenix in play that they can just never permanently deal with. Sagu Mauler is also very difficult to deal with. There are not a lot of strong edicts in the format. There's just dead drop, really. And the sweepers are fine, but nobody seems to be playing them online right now. So a giant hexproof guy is very strong and very hard to deal with. A lot of games just end with a turn 5 Sagu Mauler played off a Rattleclaw Mystic, and the opponent just can't deal with it. So then for spells, we've got 4 Lightning Strike and 3 Magma Jet. Those are in there for the red aggro decks and the black aggro decks. The black are a little bit less important because they don't have anything on the level of Goblin Rabblemaster that you need to immediately deal with. 7 is a good number for these. I'm pretty happy with this. I might swap the 4th Lightning Strike for the 4th Magma Jet. I was worried about the Jeskai Tempo deck that had the Mantis Riders in it, but I'm not seeing a lot of that deck, so it's possible that Magma Jet is a little bit better than Lightning Strike. They both deal with Rebel Master, they both deal with Elvish Mystics and Rattleclaw Mystics, and neither of them will deal with Courser or Caryatid, so Magma Jet's often a little bit better, but I am still worried about stuff like the Mantis Riders. Then for our larger effects, we've got 3 Xenagos, the God of Revels. So this guy doesn't really do anything on his own, but if you have a Sagu Mauler or an Ashcloud Phoenix, or even just a Trail of Mystery and a random morph, this guy will hit for a lot of damage. I originally had Keranos in here as my effect against control decks, But Xenagos is actually not that difficult to turn into a creature because Ash Cloud Phoenix counts for double. So if you have like 2 Ash Cloud Phoenix and a Xenagos, you're already most of the way there actually. You just need 1 random green permanent. Trail of Mystery counts towards him, so you can get 2 or 3 Trail of Mysteries in play in a long game, and they'll just sit there adding devotion. And then if you combine him with Ash Cloud Phoenix or Sagu Mauler, you're attacking for massive amounts of damage that are very hard to deal with. And then finally, main deck, we have 2 Hunter's Prowess. Hunter's Prowess is a card that I've liked for a long time but couldn't find a deck for, and I think it actually works very well in this deck. You can do things like play turn 2 Trail of Mystery, play turn 3 Rattleclaw Mystic face down, and then turn 4 turn Rattleclaw Mystic face up. It gets +2/+2. You Hunter's Prowess it because of the mana from its turning face up trigger, and then you attack for 7 and draw 7 cards on turn 4. And even if they have a blocker, it's probably just a Courser, and they're going to throw it in front, and you're still going to draw 3 cards and kill their Courser. And then later in the game, if you have an Ash Cloud Phoenix, or especially a Sagu Mauler, it just represents a huge amount of damage and a large draw of cards. Generally, when you cast Hunter's Prowess, even if you're casting it on something small like an Ice Feather Aven or a Temur Charger that started the turn face up, you're still drawing so many cards that you're going to have to discard down to hand size at the end of the turn. And it's very difficult to lose a game that you weren't super far behind by the time that happened. If you were even on board or even ahead, you're just going to win the game when you resolve a Hunter's Prowess. So let's look over at the sideboard here. We've got 3 Magma Sprays. This is just some more answers to the black aggro decks with their Blood-Soaked Champions and the red aggro decks with their Goblin Rabble Masters. Just a little bit cheaper than the burn that's in the main deck, but a little bit less versatile because it can't hit players. We've got 3 Aether Spouts and 2 Hornet Queens. These are for the green mid-range decks that are ramping into large things. So across the board, you often see things like Stormbreath Dragon, Arbor Colossus, Pelucranos, or a Hornet Queen. And Aether Spouts and Hornet Queen are just the best ways in these colors to clean up a bunch of creatures that are threatening you. And then we've also got 3 Dissolve and 4 Keru Spell Snatcher. These are for the slower decks, like mostly the control decks, but also the Dissolves can come in against the mid-range decks. You just want to be able to stop things like Elspeth or Sarkhan. And if you can take an Elspeth with a Spell Snatcher, it's very unlikely that you're going to lose that game. It's just an incredible beating. So it's possible that I should have 4 Dissolve and 3 Spell Snatchers, but in the matchups where I want to bring in a bunch of counter spells, the mana cost really doesn't matter. So you're perfectly happy to pay 9 mana instead of 3 mana for a counter spell because you're getting that spell. And usually the spells that you're countering are the ones that matter. So you're not countering things like Divination or Disdainful Stroke. You're countering things like Elspeth or Ajani, Mentor of Heroes, or Fated Retribution. Things that are very large effects. And an interesting thing about the Spell Snatcher is if it gets to counter a spell, you don't have to play the spell immediately. You don't even have to have the Spell Snatcher in play to play it. So you can steal something like a Fated Retribution, and when you have a bunch of creatures on the board, you obviously don't want to cast it. But let's say they play an End Hostilities a turn or 2 later, and then a turn or 2 after that they play a Planeswalker. You can immediately cast their Fated Retribution and just kill their Planeswalker. Or let's say they cast a Stormbreath Dragon, and you take that, and let's say you don't want to take the Stormbreath Dragon because you don't want to attack into the Arbor Colossus that they have in play. Maybe a couple turns later you draw a Xenagos, and suddenly you can play that Stormbreath Dragon, and because it's free you can immediately monstrous it, and then you can pump it with Xenagos. So you just can do a lot of tricks by just letting the spell stick around in exile for several turns, and then playing it when it's most advantageous for you to play it. So that's the deck tech for this deck. I'll post another video shortly. That is the deck tech for the blue-white control deck. Thank you for watching.